I'm going to turn this one on, to be fair, at 3400 in order to get the best idea as the comparison between the two, because this is a bicolor light, so it can obviously, the most obvious thing is it does differently is change color. So let's turn it on. Now immediately what I see is that the beam is actually considerably wider, which I didn't even realize until I look at it now when I put them side by side exactly how much wider it is. This looks like a 70-degree native beam in full flood. Chances are, if you're a dedolight user, this is a light head that you've come to know and love. It's been around for about 30 years. It's the classic dedolight 150-watt halogen. It's a DLH4. It's such a simple and elegant little light source, and there's no wonder why it's been popular for 30 years. It's just a wonderful size. It's a workhorse, lasts forever, and some of the best light quality still available on the market. Okay, if you want to go over to the LED world, its updated LED relative has been out for maybe 2 or 3 years now, I'm not entirely sure, is the DLED7. There's also a DLED4, a 40-watt version. This is the newer version, and it's got double the power of the DLED4. It's a DLED7. This is a 90-watt bicolor light, and there's also a daylight-only version. And we'll look at both of them in just a couple minutes here when we do a little bit of a demo of the beam. It's a permanent friction yoke. You can actually adjust that with like a little Allen wrench here if you need to, if you're having like a heavier attachment, like a projection attachment with a heavy zoom lens on it. The body, like all the DLEDs, are streamlined with this large focusing assembly here. This is a double helix like turning ring, and what it does is it pushes the head and the tail away at the same time so that you use the least amount of turns in order to get in full flood and full spot on this light head. It is actively cooled because there's too many LEDs in here for this size frame, so it has to be actively cooled, unlike its relative, the DLED4, which has an passively cooled light. This one has an active cooling fan that's perfectly silent. You're not going to get any complaints from a sound operator if it's close to set on one of these, okay? Now, 3 power options that you're going to need to be specific about what you want. If you purchase one of these, you either have a DMX ballast right here, AC DMX, or you have a standard AC inline ballast, okay, dimming in color. It's so simple, it's just a couple knobs, that's it, all right? So there's really no need to, even have a huge manual about it. This is the battery ballast, okay, so if you are going to go DC with it, you need to have a separate ballast for that, all right? So keep that in mind, that those are the 3 ballast options that you can purchase when you get one of these lights, or rent. Hopefully someone has those options for you. If you buy a light set, you can expect to get a barn door, the best accessory in the world, the light shield ring. It's a foundational accessory, don't lose that. And the light head, one of the ballasts, and the cables that you need to operate it. So that's standard light set. Let's take a look at some of the numbers and the output and the beam in a quick demo over here. Okay, one of the most common questions I get around here is, what is the difference between a classic 150 and the new DLED7 90-watt bicolor light? So let's turn on a classic 150, and this is in super spot, and full up it's 3400. And it's perfect color. No LEDs can get as perfect as this. And it's a thing of beauty. So let me go and get one reading here for you in super spot. 304 foot candles. Okay? Now I'm going to go into full flood. I'm 3 meters on both of these lights from my classic spectra here. 29.5 foot candles, okay? So that is a classic 150, the one you all know and love. Now, the newer DLED7 bicolor. I'm going to turn this one on, to be fair, at 3400 in order to get the best idea as the comparison between the two, because this is a bicolor light, so it can obviously, the most obvious thing is it does differently is change color. So let's turn it on. Now immediately what I see is that the beam is actually considerably wider, which I didn't even realize until I look at it now when I put them side by side exactly how much wider it is. This looks like a 70-degree native beam in full flood. Set at 3400, let's take a look at it. 28.6 foot candle, so very close to the classic. Now I'm going to go super spot. Again, turning the focusing knob here. super spot on a DLED7 bicolor set at 3400. Let's take a look at the reading. 181 foot candles, so less than the 150. And one thing to note here too is that it's not as tight. The super spot isn't as tight as a classic because this is a diode spread the size of a quarter, and this is a very hot point of light that's an arc inside the lamp. It's not necessarily fair in that regard. So that is the comparison at 3400, but remember it's a bicolor light, so let's go through that. This is a constantly powered 90 watt source. So when I go into the warmer settings here, I think this one goes down to 2600, let's see, 2700, it maintains a lot of intensity. Other systems I can't say that because they usually split the power. They call it a 90 watt head. They put 45 watts on the tungsten diodes and 45 watts on the daylight diodes. Here it's constantly powered at night. Whatever diodes are on at any given time, it's always getting 90 watts of power. So here on the coolest side of the settings here, we're looking at 6800, okay, color temperature. Let's get a reading here and then in full flood to give you an idea of its max output in daylight, or closer to daylight. 190 foot candles. And let's go into full flood. .30-foot candles. Now, I'm going to drop this down to 5600 because our cameras are set at 5600. And that'll give you a little bit better color to look at. How can you change the light ratio from this head natively? We have a couple optical accessories that you can put onto it in order to take it either further out or narrow it down and get even hotter. So starting with the most, everything is done, by the way, in full flood on these accessories. So this is the first one. This is the wide angle lens adapter, right? You put this in here, open up the barn doors, and you get 90 degrees off the surface of this lens. It's spread much further. Obviously there's less exposure there, but you do get the pivoting barn doors, which they act just differently from standard barn doors, and they give you some really great options in terms of cutting shapes. But anyway, so you can take this light to 90 degrees if you need to. That is the wide angle lens adapter. Now you have, on the flip side of that, how can you get a super spot even hotter? And this is where this amazing device comes into play, and it's so simple and elegant and beautiful. This is the DLED7. It is the largest beam intensifier for this light head. There are a couple more, but this is the one I'm going to show you because it shows you the maximum change and what you can achieve. Now, counterintuitively, the light is set at full flood. That is how beam intensifier works on Dedo lights. You need to be in full flood in order for the effect to work, because it warps the full flood, the most optimized position of the light head, back into a spot. And there it is. You can kind of fidget a little bit with the focusing ring just to get a little bit more intensity out of it if you're going to be using reflectors, depending on what you want to use with that new amount of light coming out of that. It's pretty intense. Let's get a reading real quick here. Adjust a little bit so you can get a sense of what this looks like. 779 foot candles. Without increasing power, we have 250% more light coming out of this in super spot, okay? So that is the range that you can get out of these light heads with optics and without optics. So the next one is the most commonly used accessory, and for a reason. That's the DP 1.1. As you know them now, they are the DP 1.2, so whatever it is that we're going to be sending out now is always going to be the 1.2. It's still the same projector that you've come to know and love and use, but it has a nice update to it. There's a keystoning knob here, and in another video I'll show you how that works. Let's just, give you a pretty baseline idea of what that looks like in a DLED7 as well, because you probably know those with the classic system. Again, perfect resolution if you want it, out of a gobo, shutter blades, etc., if that's important to you, without any chromatic aberrations. And then you just can adjust the focus a little bit in order to make that perfectly homogeneous. That's the DLED7 bi with the common accessories that you can use to adjust the beam to get the widest, narrowest, hottest, coolest temperatures and intensities out of it. Let's take a look at the DLED7 daylight only version. All right, this is the DLED7D, the daylight model. It's balanced at 5600. We're going to get some readings, do the song and dance here. The nice thing about the daylight only is perfect color in the lowest dimming ranges. That is definitely a perk to choosing to go mono color with this light head. Price is a little bit better. Output in 5600 is pretty good. All right, so here is full flood. Let's get a reading. About 25.9, 26 foot candles. And let's go into super spot. Tighter, a little bit tighter than the bicolor. 292 foot candles. Now you've seen the other accessories and what they do, same type of functionality here. The only thing I'm going to show you is the beam intensifier, because that is different on the daylight only. So let's go and do that setting. Again, full flood, warped back into a super spot. There it is. It's pretty tight and it's very bright. Let's take a look at that. 1,710 foot candles, a huge increase with the DPBA 714. This is a workhorse. This is the new classic. This is the one that's going to propel us here for the next decade. And I think you'll find that you'll become just as friendly with these and accustomed to them as you have the classics. I mean, they're fantastic lights, and they're gaining in momentum and popularity. So if you're getting into Dedo lights, this is an obvious place to start.